Welcome to this video tutorial on how to prepare and submit a simple initial poison center notification in Euclid and submit it through the ECHA submission portal. Once we access the service we wish to work in, we arrive at the Euclid dashboard. You can see here we have substances, mixtures, and articles, which are not relevant to poison center notifications. So let's go to the mixtures. Once we click in the mixtures widget, we arrive at the mixtures landing page. And here you can see a list of all of the mixture data sets that I've created. And now you can see all of the dossiers that I've created from those data sets. Let's move back over to the data sets and create a new mixture product data set for a poison center notification. So we open our basically empty data set. The very first thing we need to do is select the working context. I set it to poison center notification, and this applies a filter to filter out all of the irrelevant fields for making a notification. The next step is to complete the dossier header. Now, some fields don't require information, but you may find that they are helpful for you when you come to managing your records later on. Now, the poison center number or the PCN number is easily generated. And then we must also provide the countries that we intend to place our mixture on the market. Today, I'll do a multi-market submission. And I need to select the languages accordingly for those market placements. Now, today I will be doing just a standard submission type, which is set to default in every data set. Should you wish to make other submissions, for example, a limited submission, a group submission, or voluntary submission, then I encourage you to look at our Annex 8 guidance or our PCN practical guide for more information about how to complete a notification for those types. As I mentioned earlier, this will be for an initial notification, but of course, later on down the track, you may find that you need to update your notification, or if you make a significant change of composition, then you would need to select this new notification box here. So we select initial notification. And once I save, I come over to the left-hand side, and once I click on this arrow here, you can see a table of contents appears. It's still empty, and it's now time to go about section by section to fill in the information required. It's expandable, so when you click on the arrows, it opens, but it also collapses. So the first one here, you can see under mixture identity and legal submitter. You see the final product here, which is our mixture identity, the name that I gave it earlier, and the legal entity, the legal submitter for the notification. In this case, it is a chemical company, and here is the legal entity UUID of this company that is submitting the notification. At this point in time, if you do need to add contact persons, this is the place to enter the information. You can select a new item, and Maybe you have contacts already in your contact list, or you can create a new one. So now we come over to the mixture composition. This is where a lot of the information about the notification is going into. So we need to first create a new document for that purpose. It opens up the mixture composition document, which is empty, and we will begin to complete it by adding new items or rows to this table. So let's start. So first, we will come and add a substance. And you can see I already have a list of substances, or I can create new ones. Let's start by adding one that has been created, just to show you how it works. And we can add a concentration. It's could be an exact, or here it's called typical concentration, or a concentration range. When we add ranges, we need to have the operators, as well as the units as well. Now, the range does need to be in the allowed limits. And as you can see here, this is quite a big range. I've done that on purpose because I want to trigger a business rule later. I should mention that function is not necessary to add for the components unless you are indicating that your component is a generic component identifier. And we won't be covering this sort of component or the other special components for ICG or standard formulas for cement products. So I save that, and now you can see it's added one row to this table. Let's continue to add a second item. This time we'll create a substance. We need to link it to a reference substance, and I'm going to show you how to do one if it's not in your own inventory list. This is just an example. And we add an EC number. We can make a selection from the inventory there. If the EC number isn't present, then you will need to add additional information, either the UPAC name, CAS name, or number, as long as the Poison Centre can identify your component. And that's it. We save. And then we add the concentration. Let's add an exact concentration for this one. Note the units need to be consistent throughout the notification. And now we have our two substances, as you can see here by this icon. And now we will add a third component. And this time we will do a mixture in mixture. Now I am going to select one from the list, and I'll walk you through the various information fields that are required to create one. But once we create a link to this MIM dataset, we add a concentration. Close and save. Now I'm going to take us back over to the table of contents, and I'm going to open the mixture composition document. You can see here that I've got the 3 components listed in the order that I entered them. If you would like to change the order, it is possible. So for instance, the highest ingredient here is water. So I'm going to bring that up to the very first level, and I can change glycolic acid around as well. Also, you will notice in the mixture composition that there are arrows for each component taking me to a subtree. So we can have a look at water. And you will see here that in this substance data set, it's fairly simple. I've linked my water to a reference substance. You can see this icon here. And I've already have classification information about this substance, which is not classified. So for the substances, we need to always link to a reference substance and include classification information. Now, if we come back up to the tree and we look at the next substance, glycolic acid. Here you will see I did link it to the reference substance, but I haven't yet included the classification information. So I can add a new document, and you can see here, I can either select that it is not classified by ticking the box, or I can include some hazard categories. For example, so once you've added all the relevant hazard categories, then we can save. And go back to our tree. Now we come to the MIM component. And you can see already there's quite a lot more information that is required for the MIM. So let's take a look at the MIM identity. We don't need to do anything here. This is already the information that I had entered before. I named the MIM dataset as MIM, and it's linked to my own company. Then we come to the MIM composition. When I open the composition document for the MIM, you can see I have previously entered 3 substances, very similar to how I showed you how to enter the information in the substance data set. So the same thing continues. If I open here, you can see once again a further level deeper is each of these substances within the MIM dataset, all linked to a reference substance and a classification and labeling document. If it wasn't clear before, the classification is only required for substances. The labeling is not. It's the same for the MIM as well. Only for the final product do we need to add the labeling as well. Then we have the MIM UFI. So here, this is where I have added the UFI that was given to me by the supplier. And if I need to indicate the supply details, then we can just add in the details accordingly to what we have. And then here we come to the classification and labeling of the MIM. So the classification, here I've added some example hazard categories. And once again, the labeling, it's not required. And finally, the safety data sheet for the MIM. If you need to include a safety data sheet for your MIM, this is the place to do it. You can simply select New Item, select and upload a file, add a country and a language, and it will look something like this. So now I will collapse some of the items in this tree and come back to the main table of contents. So now we've entered the mixture composition information, and now we come to the product identity. So there's two sections here. We have product information and the UFI section. Neither of them have any documents associated at this point in time. And let's have a look at how it fits together. We're going to first add a new product information document. Now, this is not for a group submission at all, so we can ignore that part and just come straight to the product identifiers. So the first thing here we are looking at is the trade name. So let's add a trade name. For example, and if you have several trade names, you must add them as separate items and not all in one row. If you have other names on the label, this is where you would indicate those. And of course, your own unique formula identifier. Now, to add a UFI in here, you should have already have generated one, and we need to select Add New. Now, the regulatory program identifier at this level, there are a few different ones. We are only interested in UFI at this point in time. And here is my UFI number that I generated earlier. One thing I'd like to point out as well is that it is possible to edit the name of the documents. You may find this helpful, and let's have a look. So here you can see now the UFI of the final product is, and I've entered the UFI there. So we've added the UFI. Now we come to the color and physical state. So when we click on here, we need to create a link. So it is possible maybe to do some cross-referencing if you have additional product information records. So let's begin. Let's say we have a liquid that is colorless. And I will reopen that. I'll reopen that, and you can see here that I've entered the information. I didn't enter form or color intensity because it's not strictly necessary, but you can always do so if you wish. And then we come to the packaging. You can select that the product is not packaged, and you can also link to a packaging information record. So let's do that. Same thing again. We're going to add new. Let's say a bottle that is 1 litre. Now again, I would be inclined to change the name of this record to help down the track. So here we are, we've selected that. Okay. You can add additional packaging informations. So let's add a new one. Let's do the same thing. Bottle. This time we will have 10 litres. Now you will notice I'm not going to change the name of this record, and we can see the difference. So already here in this list, here is the name that I changed of the record, and here is the unnamed or default name of the record. So now I've got 2 packaging information records there. I'm going to leave it at that and come back a little bit to product packaging later. We come to the use type. You can select one or multiple or even all. And then the main intended use, which is based on the European product categorization system. Let's say we have this. Secondary uses aren't strictly necessary. They're not required, but if you feel the need, you can always add a couple of secondary uses as well. Now we have the marketplace. If you remember from the dossier header, I selected 2 markets, and these must be consistent with what we include in these product records. Today, I'm going to show you how it works to make 2 product information records. One will be to Finland and one will be to Sweden. But it is possible that you can add both in the one record. For instance, so I'm just going to remove Sweden from here. And because this is an initial submission, we don't have any ceased market activity to report either. Okay, so we've now entered the information for one full product information record. You can see I've added the color and physical state, the UFI, the 1 litre bottle, and another packaging which we didn't name. Let's now go ahead and make a second product information record, and I will show you how the cross-referencing works. So we add a trade name. We don't have any other names to report. We come to the UFI. So you can see here, I could make this selection of the same UFI that we added in the first product information record, or I could go ahead and add a new one. I'll make this selection. We come to the color and physical state. This happens to be the same one that we entered before, a liquid that is colorless. And now we make the link to the packaging information. So here we can decide to make a selection out of the records that we've already created. So let's do that. And maybe we decide to add another one. There we have. There we have it. The packaging information has been included. The use type and the main intended use. This time I'll make a different selection. And the country now I will include as Sweden. So there we are. We have our 2 product information records, our mixture composition information, and now we are ready to add the classification. Actually, before we get to there, I will show you how this UFI section is working. So if you recall at the beginning, there was nothing in the UFI section. Now you will find that we have the UFI that's been extracted from these product records, and it's been included in here. So we didn't add anything in here, but it is also possible. Well, you will see them in this section. So now to the classification and the labeling. We've got to add a new document. If it's not classified, you would mark it so. If it is classified, then you would need to add the relevant hazard categories. As such. And if you scroll down, you can see that there are additional fields to include other information on reproductive toxicity, mutagenicity, and so on, even including specific target organ toxicity. We can add a little here. And you may find that when it's required to add some free text, you will see the free text fields become available in the different languages that you've selected in the dossier header. So this is where you would include information in those languages. And we scroll all the way down, and you can add also other information such as additional hazard classes and statements and so on. When it comes to the labeling, you can go through and add the information as you have it. For instance, the signal word, the hazard pictogram. But it is also possible to include or to use this calculate feature that we have. Now, when I press it, I'm informed that the information will be auto-filled based on the information provided in the classification section, and that any information already contained within will be overwritten. So when I press calculate, you see it's changed the signal word and the hazard pictogram. And we can see all of the different hazard statements. Now, it would be your responsibility to check that all of these are correct. And of course, if something is not correct according to you, then you can also edit, you can delete items and so on. Here is where you would add any non-GHS hazard statements. It's possible, for instance. and then save. So that's the classification and labeling. Okay, I've accidentally added 2 classification and labeling records, which is not permitted for a standard submission. So I will remove that one and just remain with this one here, where I entered the information. The mixture safety data sheets and toxicological information is next. So once I create a new record, this is what comes up. Now, it's not necessary to add the safety data sheet, but very similar to how I showed you in the MIM component, you would select a file, country and a language and upload your SDS there. However, what is necessary is the toxicological information. So once again, it's free text. So you can see that we have the free text fields for the Finnish version and the Swedish version. So I'm pasting some information that comes from our practical guide on this, on completing this section. And I think the main thing to notice here is that when you are copy and pasting information from the SDS, make sure that it doesn't contain any cross references to other sections of the SDS. So this has to be standalone information. So I save, and that brings me to the last bit of information, which is on the pH. Now, it could be that the pH is not available, and if so, you would need to provide quite a solid justification as to why it's not available. But if it is available, then you can add either one number or a range. But you also need to add the concentration of the solution that you took the pH of. So I save the information, and now we are ready to validate what we have done, and we will find business rule failure. So once I validate it, it takes me back to the dossier header, and I make sure that everything is correct. And here we are. This was the business rule I was expecting, which says that I've provided concentration ranges that aren't really in accordance with the regulation. So we can click on this link, and it even tells you the number, or it identifies the number of the component, which in this case is number 1. So I click here and I can make the edit. Save the information, and then press revalidate. And now you can see that there are no business rule failures and no quality check failures as well. So once we're happy with the quality of our dossier, we can come back, or rather, once we're happy with the quality of our data set, we can come back and create a dossier from that. Once again, we check the dossier header and select create. Now I have two choices. Because I am working in Euclid Cloud, I can open the dossier and have a look, or I can proceed to submission. If you're working on a Euclid desktop, then you will not have the proceed to submission functionality. And in that case, you would need to upload your dossier here by using a simple drag and drop feature. But working in the cloud, it does it automatically. So my final product dossier has been uploaded and now I'm ready to submit. I see I have a submission number, and when I click on it, I can see a status for the submission that it has passed, but there is a warning here. So this means that it has triggered some quality checks in the portal. We'll have a look at those in a minute. It tells me or gives me a brief overview of the submission information for the dossier, that it's for a final product, which I called a cleaning product. It's an initial notification. It gives information on the product as well as the UFI, where it's going, and the timestamp of submission events. You'll see that it's yet to arrive in the Finnish and Swedish appointed body. So you will need to also check that too, but you can see it has passed all of the validation checks. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a submission graph and a history of the submission, which is more relevant when you have updates. And over here, you can see the validation report. So the validation report will show what was, if there are any issues, if there was a business rule failure. But in this case, we have an exclamation mark, which is a warning. And it's given me the quality rule warning number. And it tells me that a submission already exists with the same trade name for my company. So I should check that. So that completes this basic tour. If you do need any further support, I encourage you to take a look at the PCN practical guide on our Poison Centre website, or also our Annex 8 guidance. Thank you very much for your attention.